You're tuned into the Growth Ceilings podcast, the show for builders, dreamers, and leaders ready to break limits and grow beyond what they thought possible.
Welcome to the Growth Ceilings podcast. I'm your host, Jim Lovelady, professional EOS implementer. EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. This show brings forward real conversations with leaders who built their careers through resilience, structure, and the ability to grow through pressure. Today, I'm joined by Maddy Niebauer, founder and co-CEO of VChief. She leads a company that helps CEO gain time, clarity, and organizational alignment. Her work supports leaders who are stretched thin and need the structure to operate at a higher level. She brings a practical and grounded lens to executive support and organizational systems. Maddy, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Jim. Glad to be here.
Great to see you again. What inspired you to start VChief and focus on executive support for CEOs?
Yeah, well, I was a chief of staff at a big nonprofit called Teach for America for a long time. And the leader that I supported there left to start a new nonprofit. And she had been gone a few months when she came back to me and was like, "Hey, I can't live without you. Will you please moonlight with me 5 or 10 hours a week as my chief of staff?" Because she wasn't ready to hire a full-time chief of staff, but she needed that capacity. And so I started VChief as a side gig. I had moved into a VP role at TFA, but I was doing this on the side in my free time. And then as I thought about transitioning out of TFA, it occurred to me that other leaders could use this type of capacity. They might need a chief of staff, but not need someone full-time in the role. And so I founded VChief on that premise and, grown it over almost 10 years to be on the Inc. 5000 list 5 times. And now we do much more than just part-time chiefs of staff. We provide support in a wide variety of areas, including COO, CFO, Integrator, which I know you'll appreciate, and HR business partners. So those are some of the ways that we support clients and how VChief came to be.
That's a great story, and I love how you now feature the integrator role, a role that's part of the EOS language and structure.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the hottest titles right now. Fractional integrators just seems to be a big need amongst a lot of small to medium-sized businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. We see a lot of those. A lot of small business CEOs are the visionary types, and they need that person who's going to bring that vision to reality, who's going to operationalize all of it, who's going to keep all the ducks in a row. And it's very similar to the chief of staff role, the integrator. It's just very, in the way that EOS works. And so it's a great framework, and we've had a lot of success working with clients.
Which is a great segue into this that I want to ask you. When you observe overwhelmed leaders,
Yeah.
what patterns stand out to you?
I think patterns. I think often leaders want to be giving of their time, right? And there's some that are sort of people pleasers. There are some that are just natural extroverts. And so when someone asks them for a meeting, their inclination is to say yes, which is not to say that that's a bad inclination, but every yes to something or someone is a no to something else. And so I think leaders can get in their own way by, being accommodating to everyone who's asking for that, whether that's someone external to their organization or to their team members who want feedback before they make decisions, right? And I think, so that's one piece. I think another piece is really around trust and around being able to let go of things. I see a lot of leaders who either think they can do it better than anyone else, and they might be right, but could someone else do it mostly just as good? I total victim to this myself. There were lots of things I did not want to give up in my business, and ultimately when I did, it was game-changing. So I think being able to let go of things and trust that someone else is going to do a great job. Those are some of the things that I think keep leaders at the wrong level, right? It's not that they're doing the wrong thing. It's that they are not focused on the higher level strategic thinking, visionary work that they're supposed to be doing, right? They're like, I'm going to be stuck in the weeds acting like an integrator or some mashup in between.
I was going to ask you that next. What is the biggest mistake that CEOs make with delegation? Is there anything else
Yeah.
you think of Yeah, go ahead.
Delegation. I think the biggest mistake is not doing it, right? Or assuming that the time that it's going to take to delegate it is going to make it not worth it because they think about it as a one-time deal instead of thinking about like, I am going to delegate this thing that is going to keep happening. And it's going to take me time the first time to get someone up to speed and get them operating to the level that I need them to. But ultimately, it is the thing that will free you, right? So I think that is the biggest thing. I think also like being mindful about what you're delegating. So to be an effective leader, you need to really set your own strategic priorities, not just the big rocks for your organization, but like, what are you as a leader focused on? What do you need to win at? What are the things that only you can do? Because those are the things that you need to focus on, not everything that everybody's asking you to do or that you think you should do. Like if you take the time to actually set priorities and say, like, these are the three things that I need to win at this quarter in my role, then everything else falls away, right? You say, and you look at your calendar and say, like, how much of my time is aligned with these three things? Well, if it turns out most of it is not, you should be really thinking how you spend your time. And then the question is, like, who do you have to delegate it to? Maybe you have someone on your team. Maybe that's your integrator. Maybe it's someone else. Maybe you don't have that person. And who is the right person for that? And what level of support do you need? That might be an executive assistant, or it might be a chief of staff or an integrator. It might be a COO. It might be some other role. And so I think just being really thoughtful about what are the pieces I'm keeping, and therefore, what are the pieces I'm delegating? And then how do I actually delegate it? How do I have the trust to let go of it?
I find that sometimes when the word delegation comes up to business leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners, they tighten up when they hear that word. It feels like a big challenge. And I've learned over time to turn it into an opportunity that you can use delegation as a way to elevate those around you, to elevate your leadership team. Stick with the things that you're good at and what you love doing, but the things that perhaps you're not as good doing or you just don't like doing at all, those might be
Amen.
opportunities for you to elevate your team and give them the opportunity to grow with you and achieve your vision.
100%. 100%. Yeah. We often
So,
talk about when we talk about like what you should focus on as a CEO as the intersection of like, what do you do well? What do you love doing? And what drives the business forward? And that like little part of the Venn diagram where the overlap is where you should be.
kind of exactly where I was going to go next is like when you see a leader who feels underwater, how do you help them reset?
I mean, first of all, sometimes it's just like addressing that need. And sometimes it's figuring out like what are the fire drills. If you look at the 2x2 matrix of like what is important and what is urgent, you want to be addressing the things that are both important and urgent before you do anything else. And so sometimes leaders can't see straight to like think about overall systems or bigger change until you get rid of the fire that they're trying to put out. But once you get out of that immediate moment, then I think it's really about showing them what is possible, right? If they are spending their time in the right ways. And I love to share my own story as an example. You know, we grew to be from a side gig to an 8-figure business without me working even 40-hour weeks. Most of the time I work like 25-hour weeks. And now even less than that. I have a co-CEO. So, you know, she runs the day-to-day of the business and I have my own sets of priorities, which I set, right? And so I'm really mindful about my time. And when people ask me for my time, they think about whether that makes sense for me to do, which is hard because I am one of those people pleasers. I am one who's like, of course I'll meet with you, right? But more and more people ask for your time and then ultimately you run out of time. So I have found other ways to like meet people's needs. So people used to ask me all the time, oh, can we have a career chat, right? I'm changing jobs. I want to talk about the chief of staff role. And everybody knows I'm a chief of staff expert. And I'm like, yes, I want to spread the seeds of chiefs of staff everywhere, but I don't need to do that on a phone call. Like I now have a template email that has dozens of resources that I am happy to send to you. And so often, and once in a while, I will hop on the phone with someone if it's like a personal connection or if it makes sense for other reasons. But most of the time, that answer is going to be no. So yeah, that's I feel like I went on a little bit of a tangent, but to answer your question, deal with the fire drills and then really think strategically and help them like bit by bit and help them see the vision of what is possible.
You mentioned your title and you said co-CEO. You've got a co-CEO, the two of you. Are you the visionary in the company?
Yes, I am the visionary of the company. And it's funny because I think by my nature, I said for the longest time, Jim, I said, I am a chief of staff at heart, which is basically saying I'm an integrator. I'm not the CEO, but like things have shifted really. And I do feel like even though I think I have all the things that make a great integrator. Like I am so process oriented. I'm so like, I love a checklist. I love creating systems. I love bringing order to chaos. But now I love somebody else doing that. And then I get to think about the big picture stuff and the strategy. And it just feeds a different part of my brain. I mean, my co-CEO is definitely plays more of the integrator role, although she is visionary in her own right. Like she comes up with really great ideas, but she is the one who is actively implementing all the things. So God bless her.
Can we assume that the name of the company, VChief, is coincidence that you're visionary chief of staff?
Yeah, it's funny because it started as V for virtual, but now everybody's virtual. When we started, not everybody was virtual, right? It was newfangled, but after COVID, that no longer became a barrier.
I think
But
a
I
lot
love
of
it.
people are I think a lot of people in our audience are going to really relate to this. What do you say is a strong CEO and chief of staff partnership? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think the best chiefs of staff, and I think this is probably true for integrators also, are ones who really complement the leader. So people are like, what is the chief of staff role? And I can give you like several buckets of things that a chief of staff usually does. They help strategically think about a leader's time. They help lead things like team meetings and retreats. They help manage special projects that don't have another natural home. They are often like a culture carrier in the organization. They're an ear to the ground for but the reality is like every chief of staff job is really different by design because it's meant to complement the CEO and where their skills and their gaps are. So, for example, I was a chief of staff to the leadership team at Teach for America. And like everybody on the leadership team had a chief of staff. And then we had a little chief of staff club. And we would talk about the ways that we supported leaders. And they were vastly different, right? Like one was helping this leader. The founder of Teach for America was speaking all the time. All she did was run around and speak to different audiences. She did lots of other things, but that was most of what she did. So a lot of that chief of staff's time was like looking at requests that came in. Should she do this? Helping her plan her speeches, making PowerPoints for her, whatever it was, right? And then you look at the president, who was the one who was like actually running the internal organization, and he oversaw like 8 different teams, and they would do these big quarterly step back, and they would have like PowerPoint decks that were 80 slides long. And that chief of staff was like working with each of those team leaders to make sure that all of the things were where they needed to be, right? It was a really tactical position. And so like even if you just look at those two examples, it's really different. And so I think that is just an example of how it doesn't always look the same, but it is what does that leader need to be effective in their role? And where are the places that, maybe they aren't their natural skill set that they need someone to lean in the same way that an integrator leans in with the operationalizing of the vision. Like
Right.
it's the two pieces that are complementary that are really important. And when you have them both working, you will go so far. And if only one of them is driving the train, you will not.
So, taking a look back through your career, what leadership experience shaped your approach?
That's a really good question. My career started in the Peace Corps. I was in West Africa. I was building latrines and putting in water pumps. And I think what that experience taught me was to be scrappy and resourceful, right? Like you don't always have what you need, especially in Africa, things break. And like you would try to throw a meeting for the town and then something's happening in the next town over, so nobody comes, right? Like there's just always things that are you would never predict that like hold you back from success. And so I think I have a level of tenacity and grit that comes with knowing that everything doesn't always work out right. I think another formative experience for me, I was a strategy consultant. And I remember I started that job. It was after business school. And, I jump in and you're creating recommendations for, the organizations that you're working with, and you're basing it on data, but you're coming up with the recommendations, right? And so I said to my manager at one point, I'm like, I feel like I'm just making it all up. And he goes, yeah, you're smart and you can look at the data and figure out what the right approach is. Like, we're all making it up. And that was actually like so helpful to me to like get over a little bit of the imposter syndrome, to realize like nobody has the like book written, right? We're all figuring it out as we go along. We're all trying different things. We're all seeing the data that's coming through and making decisions based on that. And I think that was really helpful. I think that also was helpful in teaching me the things that I don't want as a leader. So I think often in consulting, and sometimes just in professional services in general, it feels like everything is an emergency. And I'm like, it doesn't actually matter which 4 blue boxes you put on a page and whether they're perfectly lined up. Like, we don't have to have this false urgency about everything in our work, right? And I just really live that value day to day. Like, I try to stay focused on what matters and what's important. And if I want something a slightly different way, I'll ask people for it. But like, I'm not going to make you work on the weekend because I want something a certain way, right? I'm a really, really deep believer that life is really about relationships and about people and about experiences. And it's not about work. And it's not about, like, though I have accomplished many things and I'm very proud of those things, like, if you ask me, what are you proud of in life? It's not going to be like that I have an Inc. 5000 company. It's going to be that I raised 3 kids who are kind and good people, right? And so when I talk about helping leaders take control of their time, it's really about spending more time not on work. Like, I just think our whole culture is so overly work focused. And this is probably like part of spending time in Africa and other things too. Like, and part of like, losing relatives before, while they're still young, or other things. Like, I just realize what's important in life and I want people to be able to focus on that. And so, like, I have done that for myself and we help do that for clients.
That realization and what you just shared is so valuable and so important. And I admire that in you. That's great.
Thanks,
Let's
Jim.
shift a little bit and talk about your business. How do you think about scaling a people-driven organization? Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you have to have great people. And we have been very, very lucky from the beginning. We have always had an oversupply of incredible talent. And I attribute that to a number of things. One is that I am well networked, and that a lot of the people who came on board with us early on were also well networked. And so we're just connected to a lot of people who are connected to a lot of other people, right? And I think if you treat your people well, you're going to continue to bring on great talent, because the people who work for you are going to tell their friends and everybody's going to come. The other thing I will say is we are, especially with the consultants who work with clients, it is part-time, it is remote, it is flexible, it pays well. And there are not that many jobs out there like that, right? And it's interesting work. And so every time I talk to people who are like, we need to go back to the office, I'm like, for some businesses, okay. But for most businesses, many businesses, like, being able to have either a fully remote or a hybrid work culture that really like honors the fact that people don't want to be at the office every day, or they don't want to commute an hour each way, or they whatever, like, you're just going to get better talent. And especially in this day and age with like all the Zooms and other things, like, nobody needs to be in the same place all the time. That's not to say you don't need in-person time. That is important. And we have team retreats every year and leadership team retreats. And like, I 100% believe in that. And that is life-giving. And also, you will not get amazing talent by demanding people come into your office. That is
So
a
you
hill
and
I will
I,
die on.
I'm sorry. Yes. You and I met through EO Chicago, and I'd like for you to tell us, you've been a member for a while. Tell us what
Yeah.
brought you to EO Chicago and what you've gotten out of it.
Yeah. I'm obsessed with you. I have fully drank the Kool-Aid. EO is an amazing network of other entrepreneurs. So everyone who's in it is a founder and or a CEO, and they all have significantly sized businesses. It depends which chapter you're in, what the bar is, but often it's like $1 million in revenue. So they're people who are dealing with similar challenges. And what I love about EO, and particularly EO Chicago for me, is every time I walk away from one of those events, I feel really invigorated. Like I've always had an incredible conversation with someone. They're just fascinating people. And whether you're talking about business or life outside of work, like people, EO, I think what is unique about it compared to like a Vistage or a YPO or any of the other CEO networking groups is EO talks about this 5%. We talk about the 5 best percent of life and work and the 5 worst percent. And so what that lends itself to is being really deep, really quick. So my forum knows like every last thing about my life, right? Like from our first meeting, they knew things about me that some of my best friends did not know about me, right? Like they just get deep quickly and they ask the right questions.
Yeah.
But it's not just forum, like your forum you meet with once a month and you work for 4 hours, you work through problems. But even just like at happy hours, right? Like there is some small talk, but it gets deep. It gets deep quick.
I should have for the audience defined EO. It's the entrepreneurial organization. In this case, where Maddy and I met was at the Chicago chapter, and there's chapters all over the country in different locales and so forth. So I'll get you out of here on this. What guidance do you give leaders who feel like they're losing control of their time?
Yeah, there is a solution to your problem. I think leaders feel like they can't do it all, but they're still supposed to suck it up and do it all, right? You don't have to. Like, let me be the one to give you permission to not work 80-hour weeks, to not feel overwhelmed all the time, to feel like you're behind the ball. There are ways to get around that. And it's really through a process of like prioritizing, delegating, and automating. It's a game changer, and you'll thank me for it.
Well, this has been great, Maddy. Thank you for the clarity you bring to an area that quietly determines whether leaders thrive or burn out. This will help many who are listening to this show. Thank you to our audience. Thank you for spending time with us. You are listening to the Growth Ceilings podcast. Follow the show and share this episode with someone who might find it helpful. I'm your host, Jim Lovelady. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
You've been watching the Growth Ceilings podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's ready to grow.